So it's obvious, being in hair, since those men are feminine, playing in hair is a feminine thing. Y'all don't have to get it. Who cares?
Exactly.
I don't know why y'all keep saying women's hair is not real. Women be having a whole head of hair under them wigs. I don't know what y'all be thinking. I got a niece got a whole head of hair and still wear wigs. Y'all don't know what y'all talking about.
First of all, LA, all their hair is not always real at all. Okay? Even a white woman told me her daughter, who is a white little girl, struggles to grow her hair. And she's been buying different products. So just because a person is non-black, like your mom and her dad, don't mean automatically. You don't even know if this woman on the screen got extensions in, because their race of men don't put them on the spotlight and try to, quote unquote, expose them. Okay? You don't know.
Johnson noticed that models mixing foundation to create the right blend for their hues created Fashion Fair Cosmetics, the first cosmetics brand sold globally that catered to darker skin tones. By this period, afros were incorporated into fashion fairs, advertising, and shows. How had the afro gained so much traction? Afros have been on the heads of a few black people, mainly artists, trendsetters, and intellectuals, as early as the 1950s, with dancers like Katherine Dunham, Ruth Beckford, and Pearl Primus rocking them, as well as the rhythm and blues singer Odetta. In the 60s, the community as a whole was discarding the term Negro in favor for black, which people were declaring much more frequently was beautiful. Every year from 1962 to 1972, on August 17th, Marcus Garvey Day, the Grandassa Naturally show featured black women, all with natural hair and, even more importantly, dark skin. There was lots of controversy because we were protesting how, in Ebony magazine, you couldn't find an ebony girl, said Kwame Braithwaite, the creator, a first-generation Barbados-American photojournalist and activist who formalized black as beautiful and helped destroy the term Negro. Jazz singer Abby Lincoln, another notable artist who rocked an afro early, was a collaborator on the Naturally shows along with other members of the African Jazz Art Society and studios. The Black is Beautiful campaign was needed. Scores of black children like a young Assata Shakur were used to calling each other black as an insult, hurling the term nappy and seeing afros as ugly and unkempt. She wrote, "We had never been exposed to any other point of view or any other standard of beauty." The sentiments of Marcus Garvey, Nannie Helen Burroughs, and others were revived and reverberated in the decade of black power. Initially, to many, wearing a natural meant making a conscious choice to make a political statement. But an afro was not necessarily seen as a natural hairstyle from the motherland by everyone, with the 1970 article quoting an annoyed Tanzanian government-owned newspaper editor who was upset that young African girls were sporting the hairstyle because it comes from black America. He used Angela Davis's picture to illustrate his point, which reportedly upset black Americans living in Tanzania at the time. This beautiful expression of black American beauty was criticized as militant expression of defiance, a shallow trend, and also praised for both. Activist and scholar Angela Davis would complain about the afro devolving into trendiness in 1994, saying, "I'm remembered as a hairdo. It is humiliating because it reduces a politics of liberation to a politics of fashion." Annoyed that a young man didn't recognize her until he remembered her with an afro, she wrote, "It is both humiliating and astounding to discover that a single generation after the events that constructed me as a public personality, I am remembered as a hairdo." Further bristling her brush was the fact that the New York Times had just listed her as one of the 50 top hairstyle trendsetters of the 20th century. But the afro had been commodified and, in a sense, watered down long before the 90s. In 1966, the conservative 11,000 student Howard University crowned its first natural-haired homecoming queen. And 2 years later, the Hilltop newspaper asked its student body if the afro, or the natural, was faddish. An estimated 300 of the 11,000 students were rocking naturals, and one girl said she'd feel like a hypocrite if she didn't wear one, and another one said it was easier than setting it and sitting under a dryer. So for her, it was about convenience and not a political statement. Eldridge Cleaver, the rapist and future Republican, said that black liberation would be impossible if we did not embrace our crinkly hair. This completely ignored the discrimination aspect. United Airlines fired a Chicago-based flight attendant named Deborah Renwick for having an afro in 1969. Clearly, the choice to wear the afro was subjective, and it was never a guarantee of someone's politics. Wrote Assata Shakur, "You can be a revolutionary thinking person and have your hair fried up, and you can have an afro and be a traitor to black people." So how are black stylists coping? After all, black beauty salons have long been powerful sources of community building, philanthropy, and business investment. For instance, Madam C.J. Walker gave money to the Black YMCA, fought for an anti-lynching bill, gave money for HBCU scholarships, and organized a black hairstylist convention in 1917. So when naturals came into style, more than a few stylists were a little worried. Wrote historian Susanna Walker, "Some beauty salon owners complained that afros would ruin their businesses, while others rushed to accommodate patrons desiring the style." A 1970 study by the African American Beauty Culturists League found that there had been a 20% decline in beauty salon visits the previous year, with the decline even higher at 30 to 35% in urban areas like New York, Chicago, and LA. Hairstylists needed to adapt, and many went on record in those early years insisting that women needed to get their naturals shampooed, combed, and trimmed properly, or they'd risk breakage. For black people whose hair does not naturally form afros and white people who wanted to join in on the trend, there was a way to get the look. The self-proclaimed Bush doctor, aka Nathaniel Mathis, began giving people chemically induced afros in 1969. While the afro gained greater prominence than ever before, the vast majority of black women never wore naturals as a political statement or identified with radical politics, with Afro-American historian William L. Vandenberg estimating 10% of black Americans supported political separatism and or the Black Panthers during this period. The afro continued to evolve past its history as a plantation-era necessity, past the 1950s era artist trend, past its brief moment as a political statement, and fully into a style statement into the 1970s, especially in the heady discos and blaxploitation films of the decade. One of the most famous afros of the period was not on the heads of revolutionary leaders, most of them now dead, in exile, or tucked away on college campuses, but on the celebrity and sex symbol Pam Grier, who infamously pulled a gun from her afro in Foxy Brown. In the caricature of blaxploitation films and the rising fashion and beauty industry, afros were definitely no longer representative of black radical power. In 1970, Beauty Trade magazine hosted a natural competition hair show so that barbers and stylists could show all of the ways natural hair could be manipulated. The winning look was the sculpted afro with the widow's peak on the bottom left. Clearly, the natural was no longer so natural. An industry popped up as early as 1969 to provide maintenance for the once radical hairstyle, from glossy picks to Afro Sheen and blowout kits. Those last two were big moneymakers for the black-owned Johnson Products Company.
She is black essence, and her beautiful natural hair is her crowning glory. Today